This is me. This is Earth 66 million years ago, and those two behind me are the largest predators to have ever walked the Earth. And I'm here to show you what a scientifically accurate T-Rex fight would have actually looked like. Now look, these are cool. They're long, dynamic, and obviously cost millions of dollars to choreograph, film, and animate. But like most things from Hollywood, these fights and the creatures in them are much more concerned with being exciting to a modern audience than with realism, much less scientific accuracy. Which means we've probably never seen what a real dinosaur fight actually looked like. So if not this, what would a scientifically accurate dinosaur fight be? Well, there are three big things that Hollywood consistently gets wrong. Firstly, T-Rex and all other giant theropods were separated by millions of years and continents, meaning they're not fighting. But even if they lived at the same place at the same time, they're still not going to want to fight each other. Animals are not dumb. Any fight puts them into mortal danger, and the reward has to be worth dying over, which is why they only fight over three things: mating rights, territory, and self-defense. The first two don't typically apply to different species. The first, for obvious reasons, and the second, as T-Rex would be far too busy doing its own thing to care about Spino chowing down on some fish, and I'm sure Spino feels the same way. And the third is mainly about predator versus prey, or really dire survival scenarios, which are rare. However, there is one animal that all animals regularly compete with their entire lives: themselves. In fact, most defensive and offensive traits of an animal end up mainly being put to use against members of their own species, predators and prey alike. And T-Rex was no different. The fossil records prove this. Their skulls and bones are riddled with bite marks, healed injuries, and signs they were regularly fighting each other. And that's exactly the fight I want to see and make. Two T-Rexes in their prime fighting over the ultimate resource: territory and the right to reproduce. And to make this, the first thing we need, like always, is a 3D model. We'll come back to reasons 2 and 3 in a bit. Now, I've already made a scientifically accurate T-Rex model before, but it's close to 3 years old now and I can do better. This time around, I wanted to try and reconstruct a specific T-Rex, and I wanted a heavyweight. At 43 feet long, 10 tons, and over 30 years old, this is the largest, heaviest, and most robust T-Rex fossil ever found. This is Scotty. However, no direct 3D scan of Scotty exists, but by using this beautiful reconstruction of standard T-Rex, another famous member, coupled with Scott Hartman's beautiful skeletal drawings, we can open up Blender, and by moving things around, we can get a pretty close approximation of the fossil. With this, along with more reference, I started sculpting. I decided to sculpt every muscle to really get a proper understanding of exactly how this animal was constructed. Once we have this, I can begin sculpting the skin. Wrinkles, skin folds, and plenty of fat is what it takes to make a good looking T-Rex. Once I had this base sculpt, I brought it into ZBrush to give it the fine detail. Now, something I want to address. We actually have fossilized T-Rex skin showing the shape and size of the scales that covered its body, and the scales are tiny. So when we apply these to our model, it results in skin that is much smoother than what we see from the oversized but inaccurate scales in Hollywood's dinosaurs. In fact, from afar, most dinosaurs would have looked almost entirely smooth, with a small size of their scales making them nearly imperceptible from a large distance, so don't complain. I then gave it a lot of armor around its face, as this part would have been covered in heavy keratin, the thing your nails are made of, to protect it from bites and attack. In fact, the skulls of T-Rex were among the most heavily armored of the Tyrannosaurus. Why? Because T-Rex had the most powerful bite force of any land animal to have ever existed, and at 12,000 pounds of force, that's 2 to 3 times stronger than a saltwater crocodile, twice as strong as a great white, and up to 30 times stronger than a Rottweiler, meaning the most apt comparison is a hydraulic press. This thing will not only pulverize bone, but it will be able to bite through a car door, and they were biting each other's faces. And you'll notice that the teeth are now mainly covered with lips, where before they seldom were. Why? Well, the short explanation is that the erosion on their teeth is much more consistent with that of lipped animals, whose teeth are kept moisturized by the saliva in their mouths, as opposed to that of crocodilians, who use the water to keep their teeth moisturized. I finally got into a place I was happy with and had our finished sculpt. And this brings us to the most pressing question of all. Can T-Rex get jiggy with it? Nah, I'm just kidding. What were its tiny arms for? Well, probably not much. Evolution is about efficiency and survival, conserving energy and maximizing what works. As the ancestors of T-Rex evolved, one weapon in their arsenal proved to be the most effective: their bite. So evolution shifted resources away from the arms and into what mattered: their jaws, which became their primary and almost sole weapon. And when you can pulverize bone and kill prey in a single bite, what do you really need arms for? And now, color. Remarkably, we do have some fossilized dinosaur feathers that have preserved their pigment, allowing us to see the color of some feathered dinosaurs. But can we apply this to T-Rex? Well, to answer that, we first need to answer a hotly debated issue. Did T-Rex have feathers? Well, it's a long debate. We know earlier close relatives of T-Rex are confirmed to have feathers, since we found fossilized feather impressions along with their bones. But with T-Rex, only impressions of scaly skin. If T-Rex were feathered, wouldn't we have found direct evidence for it already, especially since it is the most well-researched dinosaur in existence? That said, all it would take is one good discovery to prove that wrong. But still, the simplest conclusion points to it having little to no feathering. Regardless, it wouldn't be getting its main pigmentation from feathers, as any covering was likely minimal, but its color is still unanswered. And for this, I think we have to refer to the bigger question. Film core: what animal was T-Rex the most like? And I would say, take its skeleton and imagine something between a crocodile, a monitor lizard, and a modern predatory bird, as those are its closest living analogs. And monitor lizards especially probably give us the best indication of what type of color it had, since they are also large, snouted, predatory, and terrestrial animals with scales. And what you see is mostly shades of brown, yellow, and a lot of black. And the thing you do not see across any of these animals, or in large carnivores in general, are vivid, bright colors for use in sexual selection, which is why I opted against giving it bright red markings or any colored indication of sexual dimorphism on any part of its body, including its horns. So all of this dictated the final paint job. And after some rigging, we have our finished T-Rex. Unfortunately, the name Scotty is trademarked, so I think my T-Rex needs its own name. And considering candid bear fight videos is what inspired me to make this, I think there's no better name for it than the current top predator of North America. So meet Grizzly the T-Rex. Now, with the model done, we need its rival. Scotty has a very distinct face shape, so to differentiate it, I pulled up a skeletal drawing of Sue, the second largest T-Rex specimen, and altered it to match. I then gave it different scars and a unique paint job, which I kept very close to the first. After all, most animal species don't see huge differences in color amongst their members, and the challenger to the king was ready to go. Considering these are the Tyrant Lizard Kings, they need a queen to fight over. But just like with modern reptiles and birds, it's almost impossible to tell the difference between a male and female by simply looking at them, much less by only looking at their fossilized bones, as most reptiles and birds do not exhibit many sexually dimorphic traits like mammals do. But interestingly enough, we do have two confirmed specimens of a female T-Rex, and we know they're female because they have an extra layer of bone called the medullary bone, which only forms when a female bird is actively producing eggs and requires extra calcium to do so. There's no scan of them, but by using photo reference of Barbara, we can alter our sculpt to match the confirmed female Rexes we know of. And voila, we have our cast. And now it's time for the next step, animation. But for that, we need to touch on the second point that Hollywood consistently gets wrong: the way these fights actually play out. If you've seen any recordings of candid animal fights, you'll see that it's typically much more awkward and tense than the dramatic choreography we see in movies. So exactly how would two T-Rexes engage in combat? Well, I wanted the opinion of an expert. So I reached out to British paleontologist, evolutionary biologist, senior lecturer at Queen Mary University, author of the Tyrannosaurus Chronicles, and expert on all things T-Rex, Dr. David Hone.
So these big fights are when things are very evenly matched, and there's something really serious on the line. Mad spitballing, like 9 times out of 10, nothing happens. As in, they square up a bit, there's maybe some roaring or some pacing or that gorilla chest beating equivalent, and then one goes, you can have it. Because it's fairly easy to get badly injured, and actually no one wants to get badly injured. So yeah, a fight is going to be an awful lot of posturing, an awful lot of displaying, and occasionally descend into a scrap. It's not like, it's the build-up, it's the squaring off, it's the posturing. They're going to stand up. You want to maximize your height, or you're missing out on an opportunity to prove that you're bigger. We don't know, but these are big things with big jaws. Maybe just opening and that could be part of it. Like, look at my jaw now, look at the size of my teeth. And then it's only that 1% that gets really serious, and even then may not be that bad, and kind of matches with what we see in the fossil record, in that there's huge numbers of Tyrannosaurs. There's something like half of them have all these facial points. There's a couple of really nasty ones. I described this juvenile, and a chunk of the top of the brain case is missing, with like a row of holes round. But it's healed round the edge, so it walked it off. If you're getting into a big scrap, it's going to be head to head, and it's going to be a lot of standoff, head to head, this kind of thing. I can imagine they end up side to side. You can really size someone up when you stand right next to them and go, actually he's quite a bit bigger. Again, a lot of these fights we see are raked down the side of the face, and so they're kind of almost taking turns, because of course what you really want to do is get a solid bite like that. That will do a lot more damage potentially. And again, we do see hits along the top of the thing, so they're definitely getting some stuff in like that. Peter Jackson's King Kong does this very well, of the inertia of large things. They're going to move slowly. It's going to be a lot of power, but they're not going to like whip round in a fraction of a second. But it's all going to be about getting the angle to get a good bite in.
Okay.
That's got to be your aim.
So with the finished models and everything the doctor laid out, I could begin prepping the fight. And the first step was to make an animatic to get Dr. Hone's thumbs up. I quickly drew up some storyboards laying out exactly how I envisioned the fight going, and I opened up Melanote, an online canvas that helps you plan, brainstorm, and collaborate on ideas. I used their storyboard template and brought in my boards so I could move things around, see how the pacing flows, and even jot down notes for timing, camera movement, or sound design. It let me see the whole thing laid out visually and made it super easy to adjust. Once I was happy, I turned it into a video animatic, basically a moving storyboard, to get a feel for rhythm and timing before I touched any 3D software, and brought it into my board. And that's why Melanote is perfect for creatives like myself. It's designed to help you organize your work and be as productive as possible. It makes starting any project easy, as it has over 100 built-in templates for just about any project. And you can share your work to collaborate with a team, or in my case, I was even able to use Melanote on my phone and show the boards to my friends to get the reaction. Melanote is available for free with no time limit, so sign up for a free Melanote account using my link in the description. And with this, we knew what we had to do to bring this prehistoric duel to life. So I once again donned my motion capture suit and got ready to channel my inner T-Rex. Now, I'm going to give you guys the secret to successfully motion capturing a dinosaur, and it speaks to their anatomy. The meat-eating dinosaurs, including T-Rex and all modern birds, are named theropods, which means three-toed. Why? Because just like dogs and a lot of other animals, theropods walk on their toes. Humans, however, we walk on our heels. So the secret, just make sure that each step is toes first. Once I remembered I was an adult man acting like a dinosaur in front of my computer and I had gotten what I needed, I was able to bring that motion into Blender, apply it to my models, and then with some tweaking, well, a lot of tweaking, we had the finished animations. And it was now time to fire up Unreal Engine so we can do this scene build and get our final image. I ported everything in and assembled the full edit of the fight. I really wanted this to look realistic, so I used long lenses and tried to get angles that a nature photographer would be getting if they filmed this for real. Once I was happy with the edit, it was time to build the surroundings. So just what did T-Rex's home look like? Well, T-Rex inhabited much of Western North America, a land known as Lyrimedia. This spanned from the northwest, where light snowfall and seasonal shifts were common, to the east, which saw milder, more stable climates, and to the southwest, which was shaped by volcanic activity. But among these, the most iconic T-Rex habitat was in the east, home to the famous Hell Creek Formation, the most well-researched and studied fossil site and habitat in the world. Now, unfortunately, the exact trees and plants from 66 million years ago no longer exist, and modeling an entire extinct ecosystem from scratch is a bit outside the scope of this video. But by using trees and plants that resemble their prehistoric counterparts, we can get a pretty good picture of where Big Daddy Rex lived oh so many years ago. And that picture was of giant, prehistoric redwood forests. So I corralled as many assets as I could find that matched the look and feel of what we needed and started building the scene. I added in atmosphere, insects, and I went ahead and made an entire muzzle system for the dinosaurs. But it made the file sizes way too big and I didn't want this to happen. So I ended up replacing it with good old reliable wiggle bones, which allowed me to get the same basic effect at a fraction of the cost. I also used these to give it saliva and blood drool as the fight progressed, as I noticed this happens in many fights between Komodo dragons. Coupled with breathing, nostrils flaring, and blinking, this should allow the creatures to feel alive and real. Once I was happy with it, I could hit render. I went to do important things, came back when it was finished, and then brought it in for post-processing and sound effects, which is where I need to ruin many people's childhoods. Because you see, T-Rex and most dinosaurs wouldn't have been able to roar, and honestly, might not have been able to vocalize at all. Why? Well, the only fossil we have related to the vocal anatomy of dinosaurs is the larynx of an ankylosaurus, suggesting, like most animals, dinosaurs had a larynx. This is different from birds who sing using a special vocal organ called a syrinx, which might not have existed in dinosaurs at all. So unfortunately, T-Rex could not sing like a songbird. And the thing about larynges is that they're not all made equal. Some reptiles have larynges that allow vocalization, and others are completely silent. And when it comes to dinosaurs, we just don't know which type they had. But it doesn't mean T-Rex made no sound at all. Hisses, bellows, and slapping the surroundings are all sounds that animals make, and they're almost definitive sounds a T-Rex would have produced. If it did have a functioning vocal larynx, it would have sounded not like a bird or a mammal, but instead more like a crocodile, as their more prehistoric vocal anatomy is probably much closer to what dinosaurs would have also sported, which is exactly what YouTube channel Studio did. He took the sounds of crocodilians, along with other reptiles and non-syrinx-based birds, and scaled them up to the size of T-Rex and other dinosaurs to produce the most scientifically plausible dinosaur sounds available to date. and he's graciously allowing me to use them. So go check out his video to hear the full range of dinosaurs he's brought back to life. So with this in mind, I built the soundscape of this titan using as many of these non-roaring, biologically plausible sounds as possible. And after all this, we had our finished fight. But I wanted to do something with everything we've learned so far, which is why I'm turning Grizzly the T-Rex into a plush toy. This will be the first scientifically accurate T-Rex plushie ever made. And for just $2, you can reserve your spot and help us bring it to life. Hit the second link down below to claim your Grizzly. And now, without further ado, this is what a T-Rex fight actually looks like. And that brings us to the third and final point. While Hollywood and an audience loves a definitive winner, nature is much more forgiving, and most fights do not result in death. The aim of the fight is never to kill, but simply to win. And that's what we saw happen here. Once Grizzly laid a definitive blow on the challenger, they both knew it was over, and going any further would again put their lives in danger. And why bother? They have to think about tomorrow. And that's the main thing I wanted to show with this video. That while formidable, terrifying, and otherworldly, at the end of the day, this was a real animal, not a movie monster. And I hope I did that. So let me know what you thought of the fight. Try out Millenor for free. Special thank you to Dr. David Hone, as well as Mark Whitman's new book, which I use extensively in this video. Check out both their books in the description. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Subscribe, and I'll see you again very soon.